Hey, everybody, welcome to another Shots from the Winchester podcast brought to you by Greencastle Consulting. I'm your host, Al Green. We have our co-host, Del Roll, and we're talking to Ryan Steck, who has been, this is your second book that just came out August 8th. Yep. And so let me get something from Del, because Del, you know each other.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So Ryan and I connected a little over a year ago. Tremendous guy, tremendous talent. Not only a great writer, but really talented editor. But a lot of people who may be into the thriller genre will know Ryan as the real book spy. And hopefully we can ask about that in a little bit. But Ryan is he's kind of like a jack of all trades in many regards. He's a talented writer. I mean, we've got Lethal Range, Fields of Fire, both of which are excellent. I don't have autographed copies yet, brother. We got to fix that.
Oh, man, we should fix that. Thank you. Thank you. I wear a lot of hats. Today it's a Yankees hat, but I like to be involved in a lot of different things in the industry. I get bored if I do one thing too long. And I really sincerely do. I like to be able to edit because I can be involved in so many different projects. I like to be able to write because then I'm really in control. So like the control freak in me, I don't have to, say, hey, I would do it like this, or I would change this, or maybe you should. I'll just go do it the way I want to do it. And then being a book spy, it's been 10, 11 years now. It's been a long time, and I've reviewed thousands of books. It's just crazy to think about. And there was no one-stop shop for all things thriller. That's what it was designed to be. And I'm thankful that the readers have, come and found me and helped build a community. And I feel really fortunate. I do. Yeah.
I think what really makes Ryan stand out is, and I'll let him talk about it, how he wants to talk about it. But, Ryan's a very unique guy. And he had a kind of a circuitous way into writing. Because as I recall, you started out as a reporter, working this was a sports beat, right?
Yep.
And then you got into Vince Flynn, and you can, instead of me telling your story, why don't you tell your story, brother?
Yeah, I mean, it's so unconventional. People say to me all the time, like, how'd you get into publishing? And I truly, genuinely don't know. For me, it all started, I was covering, I was a sports reporter. I was covering the Detroit Lions. It was an 0-16 year, by the way. Like, we're good now. We won last night on Monday Night Football, and I'm like, man, I might never have gone the publishing route if they were good back then. But that job was miserable. They sucked. Like, they were so bad. And at the time, I was writing, write-ups and articles, and I felt like I relied a lot on the copy editor. And one day, as an adult, I went to the doctor, and my doctor said, hey, have you ever been tested for, like, dyslexia? And I said, no. And so I went to the place, and they test you for everything. And it came back that I was, like, super dyslexic. And I totally lost all confidence in my writing ability. So I went back to my doctor, who at the time was just sort of like, no nonsense, matter of fact. And he was like, just start reading a lot. You'll get over it. So I went home, and like the way my brain works is I Googled dyslexic authors, because I figured, like, I want to write for a living, and I thought I'd be writing about sports for a living, but I want to know who else has battled this. Yeah. And then had some success. So this name pops up, this guy, Vince Flynn. And I'm like, oh, he consulted on this show 24. He's got this character, Mitch Rapp. That's a cool name. This sounds good. And then I never read anything. And then like 2 weeks later, Vince Flynn died, and his name was all over the news. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I just heard about this guy. So I bought his first book that night, American Assassin, and it literally changed my life. By the end of the night, I had ordered the whole series, read all the books, was flying through them. But like when you're a sports reporter, you're watching the game, and then you're writing the game like summary as you're seeing it. So I knew I needed to practice writing while I'm watching, taking notes while I'm watching. So I just started taking notes about Mitch Rapp and the series. And lo and behold, like I had like hundreds of pages, hundreds of legal pads of notes. And my wife is like, you're nuts. What are you doing? And I was like, I have no idea. I'm practicing. In my mind, this was practice to get back to the day job. To practice writing, I created a Mitch Rapp fan site, put it out there. Thought no one would find it. The good people at Simon & Schuster, good friend of mine, David Brown, Atrium Mystery Bus, if you're on Twitter or whatever Elon calls it now, X or whatever. Like, if you're on that, look at Atrium Mystery Bus. An author who's a dear friend of mine, Kyle Mills, was picked to take over the Mitch Rapp series. And he asked, like, hey, send me all the notes Vince had. And they were like, he has no notes. And so I think Kyle freaked out because he thought there'd be like a Bible or something of the universe, the characters. And they were like, well, hold on, we know a guy. So they put him in touch with me. And the rest really went from there. I started working with author Ted Bell of the Alex Hawke series and edited for him and then other authors and sort of cut my teeth doing that. I never really intended to do it. That's the funny thing, is I never sat one day and was like, I think I'm going to be an editor. How do you do that? It really just happened. My first client was like Ted Bell. He already had a bunch of New York Times bestsellers, and he was like, I want to work with you. And I was like, I don't think I have anything to offer. And I remember he sent me the first manuscript I worked on, and I was so intimidated because I was like, what would I possibly say to this guy? And so I put some comments down and sent it back, and I didn't hear anything from him for a few days, and I thought he was mad. Like, I got a text from him that said, like, hey, we need to have a powwow later today. And I was like, I know what he's going to do. Like, who the hell do you think you are telling me? We get on this call, and he was like, hey, buddy, he's this big, larger-than-life character. And he was like, buddy, I love all this. This is great. It's brilliant. I'm going to use it all. What do you think of the next few chapters? And I was like, oh, all right. I guess I'm going to work on this. And so it kind of just took off and evolved from there. And I started working on stories, and I thought, you get paid pretty well to do that. Not as well as the people who are getting paid to write them. And I was hearing some of, the money being thrown around for acquiring different books. And I was like, that's a lot more than I make. So maybe I'll just start writing. But I never had, as like a kid, like dreams of being an author or anything like that. It all just sort of kind of worked out. And I just sort of put my head down and started working. When I was covering and working on thrillers, I was writing book reviews for other outlets, other media stuff. There was no like one website for thrillers, one media outlet. And it was Ted Bell and some other authors. They said, like, you should go make that. We'd support you. And so I've never really told this story, by the way, Del, so this will be a new one. But nice. I was working with someone to build the bookspy.com. Now, it's called therealbookspy.com. So I had a partner, and they were going to build a site and handle all the behind the scenes stuff. And I found out that they basically had a plan to cut me out. And they were going to own the bookspy.com. They started trademarking and doing everything behind my back. So I went out, got a lawyer, and got smart, and I trademarked therealbookspy.com and did all that, and I launched first. And nice. He had no insider access or anything. It was going to be dependent upon me, but his goal was, I think, just to phase me out or never give me any of the profits. So that's how I became the Real Book Spy. A lot of people have asked me, like, why the Real Book Spy? And I've just never really told that story. But that's why I'm the Real Book Spy. And I was sort of a very polite middle finger to the person that, had planned to cut me out. But at the time, I was like, we need a one-stop shop for all things thrillers. And I looked at covering the industry and the genre the same way I would the NFL or the Detroit Lions. When you write about the Lions, you're writing about the game. So I want to write about the books. We're writing about the players. So I want to write about the authors. I want to interview the authors. I want to announce book deals. I want to break news. I want to be like the Adam Schefter, but of the thriller world. That was my goal. And it just so happened there weren't a lot of competitors. There was a lot of readers out there that, love these types of books and were hungry for someone to cover them and give recommendations. And it just took off, and I got really lucky.
That is awesome. And I'm so glad you're willing to share that story because, one of the things about Greencastle is we're all veteran-owned, veteran-operated company. And I think being able to speak to your journey, learning that you're dyslexic. And, there's a lot of people who would just let that be an albatross around their neck and hold them down. And you are proof positive of how you can take this, and you may think it's a weakness, or people might think it's a weakness, but you've turned it into an absolute strength. And it's driven your writing, your editing, the Real Books By, as a central marketplace, a conversation space for the entire genre. And it's fantastic. And I am so glad you're willing to share that story with folks.
Yeah. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah, I don't look at things as disadvantages. I have an autistic son. I have 6 kids. One of my kids is autistic, and we were told he struggled to read so much. We were told, well, he just might not read. And I thought at the time he was like 5 or 6, 7 maybe. And I'm like, how can you say that? How do you know that over the course of a whole life, we're just going to decide right now it's okay if he doesn't read? And so I don't see the world that way. And I talked to someone who said, hey, spend a week at their level. And I didn't know what that meant. I remember there was like literally a week I spent on my knees following my kid around because I thought they meant literally on their level. I want to see the world the way he does. Yeah. And it opened my eyes to a lot. And I remember my wife and I'm so sensitive with my children. Like, I'm a big teddy bear. I'm not like the characters I write. I'm really not. Matthew Red, my hero, is this big badass former Marine Raider, can do all the stuff that you'd expect your action heroes to do. I'm much more of a puddle when it comes to my kids. I remember when my son was diagnosed as autistic, I sat there and cried. And the lady was like, Mr. Steck, look at it like this. Best case scenario, he'll be really high functioning. Worst case, he's going to be your buddy forever. And then it wasn't scary to me anymore. I was like, oh, all right, he's my best friend in the world. My wife is always the driving force for us. And she was like, he's going to be high functioning. And I just remember thinking, what if he's not? How do we know that? And she was like, we're going to make sure he is. So we really started working on reading. And I can remember very vividly the day I woke up and he was sitting there reading one of the I Am books, I Am Abraham Lincoln by my buddy Brad Meltzer. It's a children's book. And he was reading it out loud. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, Ryan, you're reading.
Wow.
He just kind of looked up at me like, I'm reading. I need the next one, So I'm texting Brad Meltzer and I got them all in the mail, a week later. And I just don't think in those terms, it's not as cool and as quote worthy as another veteran, Jack Carr, former Navy SEAL, just took the industry by storm a few years back. You guys know, and he's such a big deal now, but he always says, don't tell me the odds. I don't want to know the odds. Don't tell me the odds. And by the way, Jack's a good friend of mine, and we've sort of bonded over having kids, with some special needs. And he sent my son signed books and stuff that said, hey, you can't read these yet, but someday when you're bigger and you're older, I want you to be able to check these out.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a really, really inspiring message. And, it really aligns for, what veterans, the veteran community. So that's fantastic. Hey, so a lot of folks might not know this, but there's a backstory to Matty Red. And as I seem to recall the story, and I don't remember if you told me this or it was something I read somewhere about how Matty Red, his genesis, his origin story was a writing project when you were a youngin' who apparently got yourself in a whole lot of trouble. So would you feel comfortable sharing that story?
I love telling this story for the kids out there. Okay. I was always a troublemaker in school, and I just never took things too seriously. Yeah, I know, right? And yet I took one assignment really seriously. We had this intern I had an English teacher, Mr. Johnson, and he had an intern named Shay Vanderstelt-Wentz. She's a dear friend of mine. I love her so much. But at the time, she was very young, super pretty. All the boys were distracted. We couldn't focus on anything. And she was so cool, man. She came in and said, like, hey, guys, like, no one's going to listen. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to do a writing assignment. Go home this weekend. Write me a short story. And everyone's just like, and she says, do whatever you want. You can swear, you can have action, violence, and that's when I was like, oh wait, hold on, wait, what? I can get behind this assignment. Now we're talking. And I think most kids are just so excited to go home and like write curse words and actually be able to turn it in. But I went home and found myself really trying, really putting effort in, and all these things that I do professionally now as an author, or I beg my clients to try to do when I'm editing, things like set the scene, develop your characters, nail your transitions. It's more about character than story. I was doing all that then, and I just didn't even know it. And so I wrote a short story about a teenager named Matthew Red who protected his school from an attack. He was like a teenage vigilante. Here's what I did not know. Monday, it was a peer-to-peer thing, and we had to read each other's assignments out loud.
Oh.
So I opened with a first-person narrative prologue that said, you know, it's like it's 1:15 in the afternoon, and you don't know this, but by the time the bell rings, someone in the class will be dead. And the poor kid that had to read it, I'll never forget his name. His name is Trenton Hearn. If you ever see this, Trenton, man, I'm so sorry, dude. But he had to read mine, and he kept stopping and looking at the teacher like, should I be saying these words? Like, and she just kind of like let him go. I thought I did good. Like, I was like, crushed it, aced this assignment. Like, you know, I really felt good for the first time. And I really mean this. For the first time in high school, I was in 10th grade. I was like, nailed it. Then the next day I get called down to the principal's office. That wasn't a new thing for me. That happened a lot. What was new, my mom was there, my dad was there, the superintendent was there, the vice principal was there, Mr. Johnson was there, and Shea Vanderstelt Wentz was there. And I was like, oh, this is going to be not great. So I go in, and they're holding up my short story. And I sat down, I was like, what's the problem? And they were like, you cannot write this. Like, you cannot do this. And I had the kind of parents that were like, you get in trouble at school, you're in trouble at home. So I was like, this is going to suck, you know? And it was the one time my mom, a sweet Christian lady, had just the intuition to stop and go, wait a second. This is really well written. What was the assignment? Yeah, it's over the top, but what was the assignment? And so when they kind of walked it back, she goes, so he did the assignment. And they were like, he went way too far. We gave him an inch. He took it 18 miles. And she was like, yeah, but that's what Ryan does. Ryan's always done that. You gave him this assignment. What'd you expect? And my mom was like, dang, mom is scoring points on this. Like, it's a bloodbath in here. Get him. And they were like, yeah, we hear you. He's suspended for a week. And so I got to go home, and I was like so upset. And it was the one time I was suspended. My parents were like, you're not in trouble. So I'm at home playing video games and watching TV and eating junk food. Now, here's my favorite part of this story. When I decided I wanted to be a writer, I want to start writing, I knew I needed a character that I could build around. And so here we are 20 years later, and I'm like, I wonder what that Matthew Red kid is up to. I wonder what he's doing today. So the Matthew Red that you read and you read and you meet in my books, this one just came out, Lethal Range. It's not the Red that I created all those years ago in high school. It's a new adult version of him, armed with a new perspective on life as a husband, a father. I thought, what would he be doing today? And so the Fields of Fire was born. And so, yes, my favorite part is this. My kids now go to that same school and have the same principal, who's such a good man. And his name is Don Eastman. He's such a good man. I love him to death. But, you know, I'll see him now, and I just joke with him and say, hey, joke's on you. Matthew Red got me a week off school and 2 book deals, so I think I won that one. And he just gives me a big hug and nods along, and it's a good joke and good story.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Always learn a little bit more every time I hear you tell it. So that's fantastic.
Change the way I when my kids get in trouble at school. The teachers take this approach of this won't get you anywhere in life, and I'm like, hold on a second, you don't know that, all right? I'm not saying every kid that gets in trouble is going to turn that and manifest it to success later. However, you don't know that it won't. So, it's sort of changed the way I see the way kids express themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of your books, first one, Fields of Fire, Actually, I think I read this before you and I even met.
Yeah.
Awesome book. Really connects that thriller genre with, something that's really new and hot is the whole, the modern Western, if you will.
Yeah.
But it's that awesome balance between the modern Western and the military thriller. There's a dash of espionage involved in it. Always a good conspiracy. Followed up with Lethal Range, which is truly excellent. Man, there's some scenes in there that I'm just like, oh man, I didn't see that coming. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you've got another one. You've got a novella coming out, what, next week or the week after?
Yeah, next week. It's a week from today.
Awesome. Can you tell us about it? Or
Yeah,
what
I
can you
can.
tell us about it?
Yeah. So, so my, the books are fully fleshed out stories. I see them in my head. Let me back up real quick. You're right. These are modern day Westerns. But let me tell you what's funny about that. When I first went to write this book, I told my agent, the wonderful John Talbot, hey, I want to write something that's CJ Box meets Vince Flynn. And I remember he just kind of sighed and went, what the hell does that look like? And I was like, I don't know. Let's figure it out. And so when I turned it into him, he goes, this is a modern day Western. And I was like, oh, and he goes, did you mean to do that? And I was like, no, but let's never call it that. So when I signed my first book deal with my publisher, they were like, it's like a modern day Western. I was like, yeah, but I'll never say that in an interview. I'll never call it that. And then Yellowstone came out and just blew up. And every interview from day one, it was like, so anyways, I write modern day Westerns. And, so we totally changed the marketing strategy because there was no interest back then, And so, anyways, that's a segue to that. But like the novels are fully fleshed out stories where I have a message I want to tell the reader, and I hope you have fun. There's a lot of heart in these books because it's what I know. Red is a family man. He wants to protect those he loves. The novella, the reason it's a novella and not a full-length novel, it's 30,000 words. So Del, that's about a third of a book.
Yep.
Because it's not designed necessarily to just straight entertain you. This is a book that was designed to be raw and real. So what I wanted to do was write a book that was like the opening 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. Some of the best, right? Like footage you'll ever see in a film, some of the hardest to watch, right?
Yep.
And so I wanted to show, so it's a prequel. So Red Christmas, which is, a play on the character's name, Matthew Red, 2 Ds. Red Christmas is sort of like Die Hard. It's a Christmas novella, but at its core, it's a prequel. In Fields of Fire, you meet this guy, Matthew Red, 6'3", 265 pounds, all muscle, just like me, if you can't tell. That's not true. Everyone says, are you Matthew Red? And I'm like, no, my wife wishes I looked more like Matthew Red, but no. I wanted to show, how does this guy become that hero that we meet in Fields of Fire? So this is a prequel. This is 18-year-old Matthew Red joins the Marines. He's not yet a Raider. And Christmas Eve, and it opens, by the way, with Red and his adopted father, Jim Bob Thompson, on their ranch in Montana. And that was huge for me because if you read Fields of Fire, this is not a spoiler, but in Fields of Fire, Red comes home because his adopted father is killed. Yeah. And he wants to investigate the death and what happened, and then inadvertently unearths a global conspiracy that only he can stop. So in Red Christmas, I got to put them on the page for the first time together. And that was sort of emotional for me as a father who's got adopted children. I really wanted to show that dynamic. And at the end of the first chapter, Red tells him, no matter what, no matter where, I'll always come home for Christmas. And Jim Bob's like, you really think that? You're about to join the Marines. You think your schedule's your own ever again? Like, it's not going to be. And so Red tells him, all right, no matter what, I'll always call you on Christmas Eve. And then we flash forward 2 years. He's a Marine. And he's called out into combat for the first time on Christmas Eve. And things just go wrong. And as things go wrong, as he experiences what it's like to kill the first time, to see death the first time, to experience a loss like that of a brother, he clings to, I have to get back to call my dad. It's the driving force of this story. I have to make it back. I have to call my dad no matter what. And so that is the thing that pulls him through this horrible hell on earth event. And the title, my titles normally have dual meanings. Once you read the books, I think you'll look at the titles and go, oh, I get it. It's not what I first thought, right? And so very much in this, at the end of the novella, was, I like to laugh. I like to have fun. It was the first time I've ever cried reading or writing something. And it was my own. I so wanted to nail it. I was talking to author friends who are veterans and friends of mine who are still serving. And I wanted to get it right. And I wanted to show what this guy goes through and how it transforms him. Because if you read Red Christmas and then you read Fields of Fire, you're going to go, oh, I get it. That's why Red is the way he is. That's why this dude is the way he's wired. And I will say everything I've ever written, the last chapter of Red Christmas is the thing I'm probably the most proud of. So I won't spoil it, but it's available November 7th as an ebook only. If you get the ebook, it will have a 2-chapter, might be 3 chapters, I honestly don't know, excerpt of my third novel, Out for Blood, which is in stores June 6, 2024. And a lot of people have said, like, is Red Christmas going to be in print? It is not. However, if you buy the hardcover version of Out for Blood, which is available for pre-order anywhere books are sold, I'm signing every single copy. And Red Christmas will be printed in the back.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
So it will be in print, but only in the hardcover for Out for Blood.
Nice.
Very, very cool.
I love that. I love that how you put your characters in these in like a novella like that to give more context to the audience of the characters' background, their storyline, everything like that. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. I'm more of a script writer, so I write. I'm working on like radio scripts. I'm doing an audio play. So I come from a different perspective, but I also feel your stigma with the dyslexia, because I go through that. I go through ADD. One of the questions that I had for that, especially, what motivates you to keep writing? What's the thing that kind of keeps guiding you or driving you, I should say?
I really think those of us who write, we're all nuts. It makes absolutely no sense. It's so hard.
Valid.
It takes so long to have any success.
Yeah.
Even if you get a book deal, it might sell 12 copies. I mean, you just never know. And yet, I think we have to do it. Matthew Red is the voice in the back of my head that will never just shut up. I literally, this happened this morning. I was on my way home from Starbucks, and someone cut me off at a light. And then they had words for me. And the way I handled it, I drove away thinking Matthew Red would have had a very different reaction. You know? And so I hear him in everything I do.
Yeah.
And he has a story that I feel like I have to tell. And I really sincerely mean this. If nobody read the books, if I never got another book deal, I would still sit at home and write these, even if it was just for me.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing. That's a beautiful thing, especially when you have a character that just keeps calling out to you to be told, have those stories told. And I have some in my head, too, that just feels that way. And I feel like it's almost like another personality that I'm, delving into in general. Speaking of personalities, a lot of authors, especially people like Neil Gaiman, they always say things like, you got to have skin in the game. How much of yourself do you feel like you've put into this book, or like your personalities, your backstories?
A lot. So a lot. I just finished and turned in Red 4, and I had a talk with my publisher today, there were things they didn't know about me and my own past that now make sense to them reading the book, because they're like, where'd this come from? And I finally got to get really honest. I like to be upbeat. I like to laugh. I like to have fun. But there's a lot there under the surface that I just don't feel equipped to talk about all the time. I don't think I'm the right messenger for some things. Today was the first time I ever told my publisher. So there's some things in Red 4 that are very raw, very near, very dear to me. And some of it has to do with drug addiction and things like that. And I just casually said to them today, I said, yeah, August 22nd, I've been sober 14 years. And they were like, wait.
Congratulations.
And I was like, yeah, it's been, so I got a past with that. I have things that are in that book that are very real to me. And I think I'm not always good at, like, I don't know how to sit with someone. I recently there was a veteran going through a lot of PTSD and stuff and a horrible drinking problem. And I didn't know how to help him other than just, I hugged him. Mm-hmm. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't know, and he was like, I don't know. And I didn't have words. So I hugged him and he goes, for real? And I was like, I don't know what else to say or do. So he just hugged me back. I've been there, but I don't always feel like the best person to tell you how to get out because I don't even know. I don't know. So there's other authors I look at and I really admire. They can go out and talk about alcoholism and they've been sober and here's how they beat it. And I don't know how to do that. I can say I've been sober 14 years and they're like, how? And I'm like, I just didn't drink. I don't know. I don't know how. I had a wife, by the way, she'd have kicked my ass if I'd have drank. So if that helped, you know what I mean? I had the strong wife that was like, you're done. And by the way, she gave up alcohol with me. She's won't even allow it in the house. Like people were going to do fondue one time. They needed flat beer. And she's like, nah, I'll order pizza. You're not bringing it in here. And I'm like, I've been sober a long time. I think I'm good. And she's like, no, you're not. We're not going to do it. So it really, honestly, like, I really think when you have the people in your life who love you and care enough, right, to really help you and never, ever enable you. I think people that struggle with addiction, any way than we're ever enabled, it justifies, to fall off and ruin your sobriety. So for me, it's never been an issue. I have 6 beautiful children I love. I have a wife who I love, and I have parents and a wife. Everyone's very supportive. Parents don't drink alcohol. My wife does not drink it now. And why? Because of me. And I really think about that sometimes. So I think in terms of, man, if I ever had a setback, they gave up all these years. They made all these sacrifices. That is such a kick in the teeth to them too. But I don't feel like I'm the guy that could go hold down a high school auditorium and be like, drugs are bad, alcohol's bad, don't do it. I don't know how to do that. So I explore themes that I don't know how to talk about in my books with my characters. And so I will just say, you have to have a launch point with your series. Fields of Fire, I'm really proud of that book. It's never the book I wanted that was not the story I wanted to tell. I just knew it had to come first. Lethal Range, you see a lot more of it. Out for Blood, book 3, June 6, 2024. You see a lot more of that. And Red 4 will come out the summer of 25. And I think it's going to surprise my readers, especially. They're going to see a lot of raw truth in a lot of the things that Red deals with and some of the things that I'm going to be exploring. And I'll just say that.
That's amazing, man. And congratulations to you to be able to bring that out and to put that out. Because I also know as a writer and Dill, I know you the same way. It's writing is very therapeutic in so many ways. It really does. You just have to get it out, and other ways, or else it'll come out in other ways, and you don't want that. You want it to
control what we write, right? Not to interrupt you. I'm so sorry.
No, that's good.
We can control these fake fictional worlds. Dell knows, and I've only just started talking about it. My wife had major health issues. We had to delay shooting this twice, and you guys are very sweet and worked with me. Thank you. My wife had major health issues, and I was terrified. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, but my publisher, I'm so blessed. The team at Tyndale was like, Ryan, don't write, don't edit, don't worry, just go be with your wife. And I'm trying to explain, like, I can't do that. Like, I have to be with her, but I got to be working. I got to be writing because I'm in control of nothing. She's having surgeries and she's at U of M hospital and I don't know what's going on. And I'm just there and I feel lost. And now I'm worried about my kids and I'm worried about everything. The one thing I can control is I open up my MacBook and I drop into Wellington, Montana with Matthew Red and my cast of characters. And now I'm in control. And I feel like, all right, here's a world I can control. Here's a world I know. And I need that. So I ended up turning in my next book like very early. And they were like, I can't believe you wrote this with everything going on. And I was like, I had to write this with everything that was going on. I had to have something to throw myself into to distract and not just feel numb. Right. You know what I mean? Right. I think that's a big part of when we create and we write. I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, it's very therapeutic, very introspective. I recognize myself whenever I was going through certain dives in my life, I was just diving into writing, creating characters, anything like that. And so the way you say that about controlling your narrative and the world that you're in, sometimes you don't have a lot of control. Writing, and if you're coming from a writer's perspective, it's just such a relief in some of that reality. You know, it's like, it's better than drinking, it's better than drugs. You can really explore yourself and the narratives and create content that feels right. And then, you know, if you're lucky, you can share it, then the world loves it too. You know?
Yeah. I've been fortunate. I really have. I've been fortunate. I have another project I can't talk about yet, but I'm going to be taking over another series, a major New York Times bestselling series. I'm taking that over. And so I'm writing that book now. And it's so different than writing one of my own books because I'm like, man, I got to figure out how to talk like this guy. And with my characters, I hear them in my head. They live in me. These are characters that lived in someone else's head. I'm really trying to respect their legacy. I'm trying really hard to honor their legacy and get it right. But then I'm coming right back to write another Red book. You know, I'm already like, can't wait to get back to my universe. You know, the one that I know, the one that I feel like I can control. And I think it's a special thing. You know, even if I really do mean this, if no one read them, I would still be writing about Matthew Red just for me. So I knew what happened to him.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I was going to ask you about that, brother, because I have a little bit more inside knowledge, and I was just wondering, do you have any idea when you're going to be able to tell the world? Share that exciting new news?
No, I have nothing. But,
no idea.
So as soon as I'm done with you guys, I'm on with them, with the publisher and the estate and all that. So I'm actually hoping like an hour from now, I have a lot more insight. I really don't know. Here's what I can say. There's a reason they're not rushing it. They want to roll it out properly, and I completely agree with and respect that. But it's also really hard to be me. People are like, what are you writing? What are you working on? I'm like, oh, it's just great. I can't tell you anything, you know? And so it's really tough.
Yeah. No. I totally get it. You know, it's like,
good try there, Del.
It's like living your cover. It's like living your cover.
Yeah.
It's like, man, nothing's going on.
I've only almost spoiled it like a million times. You know, because I stream on Twitch because there's no other authors on Twitch. And my agent was like, you should get on Twitch. I didn't even know what that was a year and a half ago.
That was John's idea?
Yeah. Well, because he represents this guy, Tulam, also another veteran. And Tulam is a character in Call of Duty. And John told me, he's like, you know, it's like $1 billion a year industry. And I'm like B as in Bob, boy, billion. And he said, yeah. And I was like, what is this thing again? Like, I'm all in. What do we do? And so it was an untapped market. The Book Spy has 2 million readers per year, but I wanted a new market. We need younger readers. That is a huge thing in our industry. We need to pull in younger readers. These 18 to 20-something-year-olds are all on Twitch watching people play video games. That fascinates me because when I was growing up, my cousins would always never let me have a turn playing Nintendo, so I had to watch them. The last thing I would do is pay money to watch that. I was always furious. Let me get a turn. And now there's people literally paying money to watch other people play games. Wow. So for me, this was a platform to get into. I don't always play games, but like in my series, Matthew Red's best friend is Mikey Durhammer. He's real. His name is Mikey Durhammer. He's my best friend. He lives 12 seconds across the street. His house looks at mine. And he plays with me sometimes, you know, so my readers get to know like real Mikey, and there's so much happening there that's really fun. But like I'm on Twitch, and I don't think of it as being in like professional mode. I'm just there to have fun, to let people get to know me, not as a book spy, but as Ryan, you know, the writer, whatever. Mm-hmm. It has come up so many times, and like obviously real Mikey knows. My daughter does it with me. She knows. I can't tell you how many times someone's almost slipped and just like said it. And I'm like, I would probably be in a ton of trouble if that happened. I cannot believe we're not being more careful about this. Like we're all playing fast and loose with it. And there's been people that, you know, have figured it out on my Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and said things, and I'm like, I can't comment, you know? But I think if people want to look into it, if by the time, you know, they see this, if it's not announced, I don't think it'd be that hard to figure out. I just can't be the one to tell you. And all I can say is it's truly the honor of a lifetime, and I'm very excited.
Oh, very cool. Very cool. And I'm glad you brought up Twitch, because it's a fascinating environment. Ryan is brought on, I mean, he brings on like authors all the time. He had Connor Sullivan, Brad Thor, Jack Carr. Oh my God. And this kind of speaks to who Ryan is. Jack Carr's biggest fan, whose name escapes me at the moment, is a huge devotee on Twitch, right? So Ryan is able to, after he's doing the interview with Jack, he facilitates a connection between Jack Carr's biggest fan and Jack Carr, and Jack Carr turns around and hooks him up with like a signed copy of his book specifically for him. And honestly, it was just a beautiful, beautiful moment.
Wow.
It was really cool because, first of all, it was the first time I've ever renamed a person, like a grown man. This guy, so his name is, oh my God, I can't remember his real name. That's because he's totally renamed. Oh, Jeremy. Okay. His name is Jeremy, but I renamed him Jace because he came into Twitch and I read his name wrong. And I'm like, Jace. And so he kept coming back. He's like, my name is Jeremy. And I'm like, not anymore. Cause I will never remember. Once I've called you Jace in my head, you're Jace. And so I know that sounds horrible, but everyone ran with it. So everyone called, even Jack Carr calls him Jace, signed the book to Jace. I won't be happy until his wife and mama call him Jace. That's where we're at with this. The rename is like 90% there. It's almost 100. We're getting there. He's such a diehard Jack Carr fan, and he was so excited about this. He was going to be going to meet Jack, and then the trip didn't work out. And once I heard that, look, honestly, it's not even me. Jack deserves all the credit. He's super busy. I called him before the interview and I said, hey, here's what's up. Your biggest fan, who he remembered, because I went on Jack's podcast, the Danger Close podcast the year before, and I said, he's like, you're on Twitch. And I'm like, yeah, but it's basically like I'm the head of your fan club. Everyone there is just Jack Carr fans. They're not even there for me, you know? It's like, and you got a big kick out of it. And I was like, don't come on Twitch. Seriously, you got the Danger Close. Let me have this, okay? So he was coming on my channel, because I just knew, like, he launches a Twitch channel. I'm like, I got 2 viewers the rest of my life. It's going to be awful. So thankfully, I love you, Jack. He didn't do that. He let me have Twitch. That's my area. But he comes on, I call him, and I said, you know, your biggest fan. He's like, oh, yeah, that guy, Jace. That's how good Jack is. A year later, he's like, Jace. And I was like, yes. Wow. Here's what I'm thinking. Can you hang around just long enough that I say, hey, we're done, but I'm going to bring Jace on to talk about Jack's new book with me. And then I'll introduce you guys and he can meet you and stuff. And he was like, 100%, let's do it. So Jack was all in, totally game. My favorite part was Jace, this guy will talk like it's nobody's business. And he was speechless. And that was I got the biggest kick out of that, because I'm like, holy crap, Jace doesn't have words to say right now. Like, we really made something happen here. This guy will, talk your ear off. And he was just like staring at Jack Carr. And that's what's so cool, man. That's why I love this industry, Dell. That's why I love this stuff. To see someone love an author that much and then get to see them and like meet them like that. Yeah. That was the coolest moment, just to be part of it. I felt really honored. And shout out to Jack for being game for that.
Absolutely. And not to like love on Jack Carr too much. But I had gone to a book signing. It wasn't this year, it was the year before. And Jack Carr loves to go to do these book signings with independent bookstores like all across the country. And which is awesome, right? But so he gives his, there's a conversation interview. He's up on the stage that takes like an hour, and then everybody starts lining up to get their book signed, right? And some people have one book, some people have every book that he's written. We're all standing in line, and they say at the beginning of it, it's like, you can say a couple words, but keep it to like 2-3 minutes. 4 hours later, it was past midnight when I got to actually meet Jack Carr. And, we started chatting, and, we knew a couple of the same people from, our time in the military and the time in the intelligence community. He knew my best friend. And it was just awesome. And you know what? I left, and he was probably still signing books till like 1 or 1:30 in the morning.
Damn.
And he's like the Energizer Bunny, and totally gracious.
Let me tell you 2 quick ones, okay? Mark Graney used to be known as the sweetest man in the industry. He's a sweetheart of a man. Jack Carr comes along, and I just remember one time we were doing an interview, and Mark's like, "Who's this Jack Carr guy that everyone's talking about? He's taking my title. He's a great dude." Here's another one. Jack has always beaten me by like a year. So my original draft of Fields of Fire, Red is gifted a weapon. It's a tomahawk.
Wow.
And I thought it was going to be the coolest thing. Now, if you know anything about Jack Carr, you know where this is going. I get the first copy of the Terminal List. I think I was the first person that they had read it when he signed his book deal. And so I met him before he was famous, before he was, like, oh my gosh, Jack Carr. He was Jack Carr. And I remember like the first time they put me on the phone with him, I was like, yeah, I'm working on a book too and all that. And I was like, hey, as a Navy SEAL, like, what kind of tomahawk would you carry? And he was like, probably the one I'd put in my book. And I was like, oh man, crap. So I go and read it, and I'm like, sure enough, there it is. And I was like, dang, maybe it won't be successful, but I knew right away it was. I knew when I read it, I was like, this dude's going to be a star. And sure enough, the book blows up, and I'm like, so need a new weapon for Red. And that's how he gets a maul. By the way, if you read my books, Red uses a maul. We had to come up with something new. And so I'm telling Jack this story one time, and he's working on his 3rd book. And I'm like, so anyways, I'm always in your shadow. And we're on the phone. I'm like, I'm always in your shadow. I got to think before you do something. So anyways, my series, is going to be set in Montana. It's going to be different, blah, blah, blah. And I give him a whole speech, and I'm like, what's your next book about? And he's like, well, you're not going to like this, but it opens in Montana. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. And he's like, oh, it definitely does. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I was like, what? You're never going to best this guy ever. Like, he's the real deal, man. He's one of my favorite people and one of my favorite authors. I'd do anything for him. I love that guy.
Yeah, he is amazingly talented.
He is.
I am so super excited to hear what comes out of your next meeting, brother. Absolutely. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I'm very excited to get in. Like, I have to admit, I haven't read the books, but I'm good. I've been downloading all the books that all the people that we've been talking to. Obviously, I'm going to read your book. I love your energy, man. Totally, love your energy.
I really hope you like the books. I really sincerely do. It's a lot, it's a labor of love. Adele's finding out right now. These things are not. I wrote a lot of books before we published this one. I wrote a lot of them. I still have. In fact, sometimes like I'll see, like we had Brad Thor come on our Twitch page. It did 95,000 views, and I was like, how that? I don't even know how that happened. And so I was like. I was telling my wife, like, I need a makeover. We're getting too many eyeballs. Like, you need to buy nice clothes and stuff. Like, I showed up with a hoodie and a new Arrowhead. I was like, babe, and so like we're looking at stuff, and I fall in love with like a very expensive car or like a new Rolex, and I'm like, we should sell one of these old books that we never sold. Like I tell my agent that all the time. I'm like, can you just go sell one and then I'll buy like that Rolex and stuff? But no, they're all in the drawer. Those books I never had the connection with. They were books I thought I wanted to write, stories I thought I wanted to tell.
Yeah.
But then I landed on Matthew Red and Fields of Fire, and I thought, this is it, man. These are the messages I want to get out there to the readers. And thankfully, they've been really well reviewed and have sold pretty well, and the feedback's been good. And I really sincerely feel very blessed to get to do this.
Wow,
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we're coming up on time, and normally there's like 2 questions we typically ask at the end, and like what's new, and that's classified, so you can't tell us. So,
well, I can tell you one thing. I can tell you one thing.
What's that?
So when I first sat down to write Fields of Fire, every character in my book, I have an actor that I picture for them, and from day one, I pictured Jason Momoa.
Oh, brother.
But here's how bad my luck is. We just get the book to Jason Momoa. So I'm with John Talbot for Literary and with William Morris Endeavor in Hollywood. We just got the books to Jason Momoa and his team. We heard they like him. The actor strike, everything happened. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I'm hearing that we're just about to get back out there and get some traction with that. So I really do hope to have news. I don't have news. If I did, I would tell you, but I'm hoping we'll have news on it soon.
Okay.
That's great.
I'm looking forward to that.
That's a great nugget.
Oh, absolutely. The other question I like to ask my author friends is, especially, and even though you're not exactly deep in the espionage space, who's your favorite Bond? There is no wrong answer. There are answers that are more right than others, but who's your favorite Bond, brother? Daniel Craig in Casino Royale. Absolutely.
I hated like the last couple of them. Hate's a strong word, but I really disliked. I'll say that. The last one was okay, but the couple before that didn't love. I love the physicality that Daniel Craig brought to the role. And I really like him. My wife and I are fans of him. I love Knives Out. That's inspired another writing project I'm working on, by the way. Yeah. And I'll leave you with this one because I think you'll laugh. But when we were pitching actors and stuff, one of my agents said, do you think Jason Momoa might be like too scary? Because at the time, this is a while back, he was so known for like Game of Thrones as and he's this big scary dude. And they're like, do you think he's too scary to play Matthew Red? And my wife was like, no. And I was like, dang, that was like a little quick, don't you think? She had that answer ready to go. And they were like really trying to paint this picture. And they were like, think of him as Drogo, like the eyeliner and the, all the face paint, the dreadlocks. Right. And if you rolled over and it's dark and you see that, would you be scared? And I was like, yeah. And my wife was like, I would be scared. And I was like, dang, babe, come on, like work with me here. So I know if Jason Momoa plays Matthew Red, my wife's never meeting him. She's not invited to the red carpet. That could never be a thing now. But Daniel Craig, oh man, I love him. I really do. There's been a lot of good Bonds. There's been some that aren't good, but gun to head, I'd go Daniel Craig.
Awesome. All right, fans and viewers, if you have not read these yet, you need to get out there and get yourselves a copy. You will not be disappointed. It is a new take on the modern Western, very much inside the military espionage space. You're going to love them. You are absolutely going to love them. Hey, brother, so good to see you. And to our fans out there and those who follow the podcast, we got something for you next week. Yeah. You take care now.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in. If you found this content to be useful and entertaining, do us a favor and hit the like button. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. You can stay up to date with new episodes that we post every week. See you in the next episode.